I've seen that, you folks have, if I'm not wrong, 80 plus stores span India.
Yeah,
And I've increasingly seen successful D2C brands. I think, Mama, Lenskart have also gone with this whole omni-channel approach. Do you
yeah.
feel that in a country like India, that's a strategy all D2C brands need to consider? Or what's your take on why an omni-channel experience is needed?
The answer is yes, it's super important because trust gets built when you see things offline. While we are now a UPI driven market to some extent and still a cash and a UPI driven market, our credit card penetration is still extremely low. India still shops over the weekends when they go out as a family and we enjoy that time. Don't look at India as only an indicator of what happens in high rise societies in Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore. It's not like that. Experiencing things together is something that India has enjoyed and the Indian consumer has enjoyed for many, many years and will continue to do so. Okay. Going to a mall is still considered to be a fabulous weekend experience. We are also looking at a stage in life cycle where you have a younger consumer set, which is between the age of 16 to 18, who are going out and experiencing things and then coming back and potentially using their parents' profiles to buy things. Or even if they're using their own profiles to buy things, their cards are linked to their parents. So, the profiles are like that. But the discovery of the product, a lot of it is happening offline. Now, is it critical for all D2C businesses to be in it? Kind of depends on the unit economics that you play with, man. If you have a large, so how retail works, and I'm going to break this down very quickly. Okay, there are three formats to retail. There is a pull format where the brand will pull people. If you have a product on the shelf, it's going to pull the person in for commerce. So that's a pull market. Okay. Classic examples are, of course, large scale FMCG brands, some D2C brands like the Mama Earths of the world, and so on and so forth. The Whole Truth, Mom's Co. There's quite a few of this, but I'm assuming a boat on a shelf will pull people into the store and say, hey, mujhe board de do. Right? So like that. Now that's one side of it, which is a pull. Then there's a push market, which is you're not a popular enough brand, but you have extremely high amounts of gross margin that you can pass on to the dealers and the distributor. So now what they're going to do is they're going to give you top of shelf. They're going to give you a counter top and they're going to make sure that when you walk into the store, they push that product to you because they make higher margin on that product. Market gets built. So automatically that push over a period of time turns into a pull because people start to enjoy the product. You have to have extreme amounts of confidence in your product for that. So only do that when you're extremely confident about it. You should have tested the market in some of the other format before you go down that mode, right? Now, the third format, okay, which I don't think D2C brands can do. Most of them can't do. It's just sheer volume. Okay, it's volume. There is no pull. No one's pushing it, right? I'm creating volume by opening my own stores, right? So I'm creating volume of footfall. I'm creating volume of eyeballs. I'm creating volume of interactions, consumer depth. I am putting capital behind it. So it's a capital intensive piece. But now I'm no longer going to rely on my dealers. I'm not going to rely on distributors. I'm not relying on shelf discoverability. I'm not relying on the brand having a pull mechanism where they will automatically walk into a store. None of that. I am putting my own store, right? Because I want to control that experience. I want to make sure that there's data richness of that omni-channel integration between the retail platform and the digital platform and so on and so forth. I want to be able to give people a seamless experience. I want to learn from one platform and push that back to the next one. So when people walk into a retail store, they're more oriented towards talking to me. I'm going to ensure that there's a loyalty, reward, referral program that is in play. Now that's the model that a lot of D2C brands are going towards, right? So you see individual standalone stores of a lot of these players. That's super important because that's one way of building an omni-channel experience. It's one way of creating consumer depth through unification of data. Your identifiers of consumer behavior become fairly more standardized. So it's not dirty data. Remember, we've spoken about that. It's not that. It's clean data. It's your own data. It's first person data. You have it because you were there in that moment of consideration. You were there in the moment of purchase and you have been able to engage with people, right? That's phenomenal. And I think more businesses as we go ahead would potentially be built on the back of that. When you're in a large scale distribution setup like a modern Bazaar, a Spencer, a Limarsh, and so on and so forth, there your data richness goes down because you don't really know who you're selling to unless you have someone who's standing there and really recording it. It's just, again, a human intensive thing with a lot of bias. But your visibility and your depth of consumer awareness and understanding is much lower. So you're really creating cross channel distribution. I don't consider it to be omni, I consider it to be cross channel. I think that's really where one needs to look at the difference between brands going offline and brands owning offline. Um, I think brands going offline is very, very clear because you have super distributors and you have dealers who are going to take your product and put it on the shelf, and then you are happy because got a new distribution channel to it. But brand owning offline is when you have created the real estate and the experience zone for people to come in. So we are a classic example of that. But in our case, we started offline and then moved online. But there are a lot of online brands which are now going offline, right? So Mama Earth is
Right.
a classic example of that. I
Right.
like the stores that they've built. Nika is another example. I think they've done a phenomenal job in terms of how their experience stores are. So yeah, I think it sort of comes down to that, whether you want to own it or do you just want to borrow it. If you want to borrow it, then you're on borrowed shelf, borrowed, store demonstrators, borrow sales folks and borrowed data because that's all that you have. But if you want to own it, then you have to have the capital patience to own it. You have to have the capital depth to own it. And then you need to be able to put a unification of technology layer on top to ensure that the data that you're capturing is put through the right consumer journey mechanics. And then, you're building enterprise knowledge by doing so.